Narrator: when one PT boat faced four U-boats at midnight, what happened next? It was the summer of 1943. The Atlantic was a graveyard of steel, and the Battle of the Atlantic raged in the darkness. On the night of July 15, 1943, off the coast of Newfoundland, a single American PT boat, Patrol Torpedo Boat 109, found itself alone, outnumbered and outgunned. Four German U-boats, the infamous Type Vikes of the Kriegsmarine's 7th U-boat flotilla, surfaced under the cover of moonlight, intent on slipping past the Allied blockade. The odds were impossible. The fate of a vital convoy and the lives of hundreds hung in the balance. What happened next would become legendary. Narrator: The Atlantic, July 1943. The Allies were locked in a desperate struggle to keep supply lines open to Britain. German U-boats, known as wolf packs, prowled the shipping lanes, sinking merchant ships with ruthless efficiency. The United States Navy, stretched thin, deployed fast, agile PT boats like the famed PT 109 to hunt the hunters. PT 109, under the command of Lieutenant John F. Kennedy, was part of Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 2, operating out of Argentia Naval Base, Newfoundland. Her crew: Lieutenant Kennedy, just 26 years old, but already seasoned by months at sea. Motor machinist Mate Patrick McMahon, the engine room's lifeblood. Torpedo man Andrew Kirksey, responsible for the Mark 8 torpedoes. Radio man Raymond Starkey, the link to the outside world. And 7 more men, each with a story, each with a stake in the night's outcome. Their mission: intercept and destroy enemy submarines threatening convoy ONS 12, a formation of 42 merchant ships bound for Liverpool. The convoy's escort group, led by the destroyer USS Bury, DD 215, was stretched thin. Radar contacts hinted at a lurking wolf pack for U-boats, including U-553, U-600, U-664, and U-758. The stakes were clear. If the U-boats broke through, the convoy would be decimated. By 2100 hours, the North Atlantic was shrouded in fog. Visibility dropped to less than 500 yards. PT 109, just 80 feet long and powered by 3 Packard V12 engines, cut through the waves at 40 knots. Her armament: 4 Mark 8 torpedoes, 2 twin .50 caliber Browning machine guns, and a 20mm Oerlikon cannon. The crew was tense. Every shadow could be a periscope. Every ripple, a torpedo's wake. At 2,230 hours, the radio crackled. Convoy ONS 12 was under attack. The destroyer Bowery reported a torpedo narrowly missing her bow. Kennedy ordered the crew to battle stations. By 2300 hours, the moon broke through the clouds, casting a silver path across the water. Suddenly, Starkey picked up a faint signal. Morse code, German. The U-boats were coordinating. At 2,345 hours, lookouts spotted a dark shape 600 yards off the port bow. Then another, and another. 4 U-boats surfaced, recharging batteries and preparing to strike. Kennedy's heart pounded. He knew the odds. 4 U-boats, each armed with 14 torpedoes and deck guns, against 1 wooden PT boat. He had a choice: wait for backup or attack. He chose to attack. The crew braced as Kennedy ordered flank speed. The engines roared, the bow lifted, and PT 109 surged toward the nearest U-boat, U-553. At 2,352 hours, Kirksey armed the torpedoes. The boat's wake glowed in the moonlight, a beacon for the enemy. The U-boats spotted them. Flares shot into the sky, bathing the sea in ghostly light. German gunners manned their 20mm and 37mm cannons. Tracers stitched the water around PT 109. McMahon shouted over the roar, "Engines holding, sir." Kennedy barked, "Steady. Hold course." At 2,357 hours, PT 109 closed to 400 yards. Kennedy gave the order, "Fire." 2 Mark 8 torpedoes streaked toward U-553. Attendez explosion. Flames erupted from the U-boat's conning tower. But the other 3 U-boats turned their guns on PT 109. Shells ripped through the night. Splinters flew. The deck shuddered. Kirksey was wounded, but stayed at his post. The crew returned fire with .50 calories and the Oerlikon, raking the U-boat's decks. By 05 hours, PT-109 was surrounded. The situation was dire. PT-109's starboard engine was hit. Smoke poured from the engine room. McMahon, burned but undeterred, fought to keep the engines running. The U-boats, now 3 against 1, closed in. U-600 fired a torpedo, missing by mere yards. Kennedy's options were running out. A shell struck the radio mast. Starkey, bleeding, tried to send a distress call. The men fought on, fear gripping their hearts, but refusing to yield. At 0012 hours, U-664 attempted to ram PT-109. Kennedy spun the wheel hard to port, narrowly avoiding collision. The Oerlikon jammed. Kirksey, despite his wounds, cleared the jam and resumed firing. The sea was chaos, explosions, tracer fire, shouts in English and German. For a moment, it seemed PT-109 would be overwhelmed. But Kennedy refused to give in. He ordered a hard turn toward U-600, closing the distance to just 200 yards. The crew prepared the last 2 torpedoes. At 0018 hours, Kennedy shouted, "Now!" The torpedoes launched, streaking toward U-600. A direct hit. The U-boat erupted in fire, sinking within minutes. But PT-109 was now a burning target. U-664 and U-758 circled, their deck guns blazing. The crew took cover as shells tore through the superstructure. McMahon, despite his injuries, kept the engines running. Kennedy, his uniform soaked in sweat and blood, steered the crippled boat toward the remaining U-boats. At 0025 hours, with PT-109 barely afloat, Kennedy made a desperate decision. He ordered the crew to prepare for ramming. The men, exhausted and wounded, braced themselves. Kennedy aimed for U-664, now just 100 yards away. The PT boat surged forward, engines screaming. The Germans, caught off guard, tried to maneuver away. But it was too late. PT-109 slammed into U-664's stern, crushing the deck gun and sending German sailors overboard. Kirksey, with his last strength, tossed a depth charge over the side. A massive explosion rocked the sea. U-664 began to sink, her hull shattered. U-758, the last U-boat, turned to flee. Kennedy, refusing to let them escape, ordered the .50 calories to open fire. Tracer rounds stitched across U-758's conning tower. The U-boat, damaged and leaking oil, dug beneath the waves, never to be seen again. The battle was over. PT-109, battered and burning, drifted in the moonlight. The crew, bloodied but alive, had done the impossible. 4 U-boats had been destroyed or driven off by a single PT boat and her determined crew. By 0100 hours, the destroyer USS Bowery arrived on the scene, responding to Starkey's last transmission. Rescue boats pulled the wounded crew from the wreckage of PT-109. Of the 11 men aboard, 2 were killed in action, Kirksey and McMahon, who gave their lives to save their shipmates. The rest, including Kennedy, were awarded the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism. The loss of 4 U-boats in a single night stunned the Kriegsmarine. Convoy ONS-12 reached Liverpool with minimal losses. The story of PT-109 became a symbol of courage and sacrifice. Kennedy's leadership under fire would later inspire a nation. The wreck of PT-109 was never recovered, but her legacy endures. In the words of Admiral Ernest King, the actions of PT-109 and her crew will forever stand as a testament to the indomitable spirit of the United States Navy. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to World War II Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life. Music fades out. In the cold, silent aftermath, the survivors of PT-109 drifted beneath the pale Atlantic moon. The sea, once a battlefield, was now eerily calm. The men, battered and exhausted, clung to the wreckage, haunted by the faces of their fallen comrades. For Kennedy and his crew, the night was not just a test of tactics or firepower. It was a crucible of character, forged in the fires of desperation and hope. Word of the engagement spread quickly through the Allied fleet. Messages of congratulations arrived from high command, and the story of PT-109's stand became a rallying cry for sailors across the Atlantic. In the days that followed, the crew's actions were studied by naval strategists, their courage cited in training manuals, their sacrifice honored in ceremonies from Argentia to Washington. For the families of Kirksey and McMahon, the loss was immeasurable. Letters from the Navy arrived, bearing the official words of gratitude and sorrow. Their names would be etched into the rolls of honor, their memory preserved in the hearts of those who survived. As for Lieutenant Kennedy, the events of that night would shape the rest of his life. The weight of command, the agony of loss, and the triumph of survival would follow him from the decks of PT-109 to the highest office in the land. In later years, he would speak often of his crew, not as heroes, but as ordinary men who did extraordinary things when fate demanded it. The Battle of the Atlantic would rage on for nearly 2 more years, but the night of July 15, 1943, would stand as a turning point, a moment when the tide began to shift, when the hunters became the hunted, and when the courage of a few changed the fate of many. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to World War II Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life. Music swells, then fades out. The legacy of PT-109 and her crew endures not only in the annals of naval history, but in the spirit of every sailor who faces the unknown. Their story is a reminder that, even in the darkest hours, courage and resolve can turn the tide. The Atlantic claimed many ships and many lives, but on that moonlit night, one small boat and her determined crew stood against the odds and prevailed. Soft, respectful music lingers. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the forgotten corners of World War II. If you want to hear more stories of bravery, sacrifice, and the human spirit, subscribe to World War II Records. Together, we'll continue to honor those who served and ensure their stories are never lost to history. Music fades out, screen fades to black,